Hey everybody, and welcome back to the Beauty Connective podcast, where beauty professionals all over the industry are coming together to grow, connect, and get real about what it's like mixing business with beauty. So stoked today to be joined by Hailey Duncan, nail tech educator and owner of Embrace Beauty. Today we're going to talk all about nail apprenticeships.
Yes, thank you for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
Really stoked. Let's tell everyone how we met.
Well, you put out something on Instagram about apprenticeships, trying to get people's voices and opinions on how apprenticeships are run, to see what experiences people are having. And I had a lot to say. So I reached out to you. We connected through that. We went to lunch, and then it was a great time. So that's how we ended up here.
Instant kindred spirits, basically.
Yes, it was fun.
Yeah, I really have this passion for education in the nail industry, and specifically coming from like my own experience with an apprenticeship and kind of just like seeing how everyone else's experiencers are going. I just think that there's a lot to be said, and you agreed. We sent like a million voice memos back and forth, and here we are.
Yeah, I agree with you. I'm very passionate. I think education is kind of the foundation to what we do. And if you don't have a good foundation, then you can't build a house on it. So after we connected and went back and forth, I think it was good to go to lunch and talk about things in depth. And I agree. I think it's going to be fun.
Yeah. So you have been licensed for how long?
I've been licensed for almost 3 years. So it'll be 3 years in April. I did my apprenticeship at Lacquered Loft, and it was good. I think that there's a lot that I know now that I wish I would have known at the beginning. But I would say all in all, it's been a really great experience being a nail tech and building my own business and having that control.
And you're such a boss woman at it all, like building Embrace and kind of from the ground up too, because wasn't it just like an empty space before you found it?
Yeah. So it was so crazy. It was actually an old print and design shop for t-shirts. And one day I kind of just woke up and realized that there's a lot of salons in Utah County, a lot of nail bars, but there wasn't anything that was built for beginners in mind. And so I really wanted to hone in on helping beginners grow their business from the ground up. And I just reached out to a real estate agent the next day, and a week later I signed on a 3,000 square foot space like a crazy person. And it's been the most incredible and hard and rewarding journey that I've ever taken. But
that's such a running theme amongst everyone that I sit down and talk to for the podcast, is just like, I had this idea, I just did it, and I ran with it, and here we are.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree. I think that you have to be willing to take the risk and lose it all and learn something. And you're always going to learn something. You're not going to come out of a failure with nothing. You're always going to have more knowledge and more experience to do it better the next day. And like I said, the worst thing that can happen is failure. And then you just do it better the next time. But luckily, I think if you have the drive to do it and you're willing to take the risk, most of the time it pays off because of your passion.
Yeah. Yeah. So you're really focusing in on beginner nail techs. You do apprentices yourself. How long have you been doing that?
I will be doing that for about a year in January. I've taken 3 rounds. My semester right now, they're actually graduating on Wednesday. So 4 days from now, it's really bittersweet. I'm excited for them, but sad. But yeah, and then I'll start another round on December 17th. So yeah, exciting.
So exciting. Excited for them. It's such a fun journey, especially when you leave an apprenticeship feeling prepared and ready to go out as a licensed nail tech and like start your own business and start building your clientele. What kind of drove your decision to start offering apprenticeships?
That is, I think there's a lot of parts to it. The first one would be my own experience with apprenticeships. Being around coworkers that I felt weren't prepared for the industry as they should have been. And then as well, I opened a salon suite about a year ago and started interviewing other nail techs that also didn't feel prepared. And so I recognized that there was a gap in the industry of either going to nail school and having that experience or paying for an apprenticeship at a premium price but not getting a premium education. And so I wanted to be part of filling that gap in the industry of offering a premium apprenticeship at a premium price, but then you leave feeling ultra prepared and excited for the future and motivated to learn more, apart from others that may have graduated feeling very deterred. So,
and offering apprenticeships, it seems like just in the past few years has really popped off, at least maybe here in Utah. I don't know about everywhere else, but it just seems like there's a lot of girls offering apprenticeships. How do you feel like that's affecting the industry now?
Yeah, I think it's greatly affecting the industry. I think in a positive, if it's run correctly, I do think it's huge, a huge positive, because you can license really high quality nail techs. With that said, it is getting saturated, and I think that because people see the price tag on apprenticeships, sometimes they think, oh, industry standard is $8,000 per girl for an apprenticeship, so I just make, if I take two, $16,000 every 3 months. It's easy money. And unfortunately, if you run your apprenticeship correctly, that's just not the case. And I think that because of the oversaturation, it's getting difficult for beginner nail techs to find high quality instructors and high quality education, and they end up making a poor decision as far as their education goes and feeling like they don't have a good foundation to start.
What is the entry level of being an instructor and giving apprenticeships?
Yeah, so they actually just changed the rules on it, but before it was 600 hours of hands-on work experience proven through a tax return or a W-2, and then you had to take a test similar to like our theory exam that we took to become licensed nail technicians. Apart from the 600 hours, there was also an option to shadow an instructor in a salon, and then there was also, you could take a course. There were a few different avenues. The 600 hours of work was the easiest route, which working full time, I think equates to maybe 5 or 6 months. I'm not really good at math, but
okay.
it's a short amount of time to be working in order to be an educator. Mm-hmm. So now with the new law, you're now required 600 hours of working time. I think you have to take a class and also take the test, from my understanding.
Okay. What is involved in that test? I actually haven't taken that instructor's test.
It has hardly anything to do with the nails itself. It's mostly about teaching styles, how to develop a teaching style, how to develop a curriculum, how to pinpoint different learning styles, that kind of thing. So it's more so about how to teach and how to build a curriculum than it is about how to teach nails. Mm-hmm. It's also, that test is for any educator in any beauty industry. It's not just specific to nails, so anyone can take it. And
same test for all the sectors?
Yeah, from my understanding it is.
Okay.
Yeah.
So is there anywhere that's bridging the gap for nail tech instructors to be kind of studying for this educator exam, to like applying that to offering a nail apprenticeship?
Yeah, there are girls that girls that offer courses on how to be an instructor. The one that comes to mind that I took was from Melissa, Polished Looks by Melissa, down in Springville. Hers is actually really incredible. It is an upfront investment. When I took it, I think it was $1,500, and it's a course that you take for 15 weeks that teaches you every aspect of teaching. It was really high quality. It was really well done. I recommend it to anyone that wants to teach, but it is a time commitment and it's also a monetary investment. And so a lot of the times people choose not to invest in those courses and they just do what they were taught by their instructor. Mm-hmm. Another one that comes to mind is Gabrielle at City Center Nails. She also offers a course. She just actually revamped her course for the new rules that are upcoming in 2026. So there are girls that bridge the gap, but because it's a larger investment and a time investment, some people don't choose to go that route.
And not a requirement.
Yeah, either. Exactly.
Okay. So let's talk about kind of what is working within nail apprenticeships right now in the industry. What are you seeing and noticing that's great about apprenticeships?
The greatest thing about apprenticeships is that you get hands-on experience in a salon setting. I can't speak for schools because I didn't go to nail school, but something really great about apprenticeships, at least in a salon setting for me, is that you can learn from me on a day-to-day basis and see how it actually looks to be a working nail tech. You're not just with an educator that only works a job in a school. Another really great benefit is because you're licensed through the state under my license, you can also make an income. So you are legally allowed to charge for those services as well as take tips. And so you are able to make money throughout your apprenticeship. Whereas in school, you're only a student through the school. And so you're not legally allowed to charge anything. The school charges, and then you can only take tips. So those are a couple benefits. I also believe that educators give a better industry standard experience if they do it correctly, because they are working day to day and doing their own continuing education. They can offer a more premium education experience on how to do prep correctly, or how to build a clientele, how to do taxes. A lot of my students don't even know what an LLC is or how to start one. And so being taught that early on is really beneficial and gives you a leg up in the industry.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think one thing that's difficult is that people going in to nail apprenticeships or like wanting to enter the industry as a nail tech, they don't know what they don't know. So they don't know what to look for. They don't know what questions to ask in an educator. They don't know what a program should look like in order to know if they're having a good experience or not. That was kind of what I look back on my apprenticeship. It's like, well, I didn't ask the right questions because I didn't know what an apprenticeship should look like. Mm-hmm. So I want to talk about that a little bit. What are some things that a student should look for in a potential apprenticeship before they get started and commit and invest in it?
Yeah, I would say one of the biggest problems that I see with people that are disappointed in their apprenticeships is that they feel that they didn't receive the time from their instructor that they deserved. So I think it's really important when you're interviewing these educators to ask for a specific schedule of how many hours per week they are sitting down one-on-one or two-on-one with you and teaching. I also think, in my personal opinion, structure is extremely important with these new nail techs. A lot of these girls are very creative, but don't have a lot of structure to it. And so having a set schedule saying you come in at 8:30, you set up, we start at 9 a.m. and I teach you until noon. And then noon to 1 is your lunch and 1 to 6 is your independent time. That to me is really important, that they know the expectations. And so asking these educators during your interview, what do your expectations look like? What does the schedule look like? What does your curriculum look like? And how much time is allotted to teaching me. Mm-hmm. So
I would tell students who are going into an interview like that to not be thinking about it as an interview for them. Like, don't think about the educator interviewing you for you to get the spot, but you should be looking at it as you're interviewing the educator to really get information from them, and also kind of put the pressure on them a little bit. Like, what does your curriculum look like? What does the schedule look like? What is the program going to look like overall? What skills can I expect to leave knowing? Just like holding educators to a higher standard, even as a student, if you go into it knowing what to ask and knowing the things that you should expect, can, I think, hold the industry to a higher standard, which I think is necessary at this point.
I agree. I think that it's really important to set boundaries during the interview process. I think that the interview process, like you said, it's more important for the student to make sure that they're getting what they pay for. I think that setting boundaries and setting expectations during the interview process sets you up for success, because if you, like you said, don't know what you don't know, and then you go into it and it's not meeting your expectations, then that should have been a conversation during the interview process, that maybe that wasn't the right educator for you, or that I chose the wrong student. But I do think holding educators to a higher standard is really important, because there's so many of us. And there's many girls wanting to get licensed, but I think it's important to be licensed the correct way and feel prepared for the industry.
Yeah, because long term, what is this doing to the industry when there are so many nail techs completing an apprenticeship unprepared for the industry, how is that overall affecting the industry now?
Yeah, I would say the beauty industry in and of itself feels saturated. I don't like to say oversaturated because there's always a place for someone in the industry. There's enough pies to go around for everyone, but it does feel saturated. As a salon owner, when I interview for girls to work at my salon, I look at their personality, I look to see if they'll vibe, and I also look at their work. And unfortunately, what's happening is these girls or these educators are putting in minimal effort with maximum tuition costs, and then licensing these girls that only got an hour or so of education per week. They license these girls, they come to work for me, and I have to reteach, which I get to reteach. I love teaching. It's my favorite thing to do. And so I offer 4-hour one-on-one education sessions. I pull them to the side and I say, hey, like this might help you a little. But it's really frustrating for salon owners to have to reteach these skills to these girls that deserved better during their apprenticeship. And then another catalyst that I'm seeing is these girls that weren't licensed or taught correctly then go and complete their 600 hours of work experience and then become educators themselves and teach incorrect. So it's kind of this domino effect that's happening, and it's really sad because people deserve better.
Yeah, and clients deserve better quality nails in the end that are going to last them. They're not risking infections or, risking things that can go wrong with their nails using products that really you don't understand how to use properly. Clients deserve better. Nail techs deserve better. You can make more income if you're better at what you're doing. It's hard to charge really high prices if your quality is low. If people see that your quality is low, they're not going to want to pay those prices. And not to kind of ruffle feathers, but maybe a little bit because...
Ruffle those feathers, girl.
Ruffle a little bit of feathers because I feel like there's just a little bit of like, let's do better.
I agree with you.
Let's do our part. Let's take the responsibility of being an educator more seriously overall, rather than just looking at it as an opportunity to make more income, which it definitely can be. But if that's the only way you're looking at it, you probably have the wrong mindset.
No, I completely agree with you. I feel very strongly that you should not be educating for the money. I do think that it does give you a lot of freedom with your schedule day to day. It allows me to take less clients per day, which is easier on my body and easier for my work-life balance. So I recognize that those are huge benefits, as well as the monetary aspect of it. However, I do think that education should come first and your students should come first always. And if your motivation to becoming an educator is money, then maybe you need to reevaluate your priorities, because clients should come first, students should come first, education should come first. I also want to touch on the client aspect, that clients know when they don't have good quality nails. And we hear all the time, oh, the market is oversaturated. How am I going to stand out? The way that you stand out is by having good education and high quality nails, because clients know. And clients deserve to go to a tech and feel like they're paying for something that's top notch. And unfortunately, you can't give top notch if you weren't taught correctly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I want to talk kind of maybe some examples that you've seen, because I know that you do interview a lot of nail techs that have come from different apprenticeships and different, education qualities. Because I know one thing that I've heard a lot when I did put that out and ask for people to kind of get feedback about their apprenticeship experiences. One thing that I was hearing and seeing a lot of was that they watched their mentors or their instructors do nails. They practiced a lot on a mannequin, but their experiences on practicing on human being hands was really minimal. So they're leaving their apprenticeship just feeling like they have zero confidence to do someone's nails. They couldn't open their own business or an LLC at that point because they don't even know what they're doing.
Yeah.
So what are some things that you're seeing from girls that you interview?
I agree with all of that. I think that, it's so hard because I would say that the biggest issues that I'm seeing is the time that educators devote to their students feels like a forethought, and clients come first in the educator's mind. And so I've heard, I've had like, it was 1 hour a week on a Monday, and then the rest of the week I would be all by myself in my chair, not really knowing what to do. I also, this is my own opinion, but I feel strongly if you take commission from your students, you should also provide clients for them, because they deserve to practice on a human hand. With that said, I don't ever take commission from my students. They make what they keep. I think it's really important to learn how to budget correctly, and you can't do that if I'm taking 60% of your income. But I think it's important to practice on clients, and you deserve to have your educator close by to ask questions. And I would say those are the biggest issues, is that students or these newly licensed nail techs feel gypped, for lack of better words. They feel gypped because they say, I paid a premium tuition cost, industry standard is $8,000, and then my educator took 70% commission from me. I only kept tips and then 30%, but then they didn't get me any clients, so I only had about 10 clients during my 4-month period, and now here I am, and I feel so lost, and no one will help me. And that's really sad, and that is the biggest issue, and I think, like you said, a call out, we need to do better to our students.
Yeah. Practicing on human hands and having guidance and instruction and feedback on how that went, how you did, what you can improve. I feel like that is where the most value of having an educator who knows what they're doing, what it should look like, knows how to explain how to do it better, how to correct it, like being honest in that, and not just like, you did a great job.
Yeah.
Like, I think real feedback should be given in those situations. That's where the real value of having a mentor. And if you're not getting that human hand practice with that guidance and that feedback, like, you are not getting the quality that you deserve.
I completely agree. I also, let's be honest, mannequin hands don't teach us anything. They teach us the very basic, this is how you carbide, this is how you put on gel. But translating that into a human hand is so difficult for a newly licensed or a student. With that said, I also think if students are having a hard time finding clients, then that's the point for you to step in and either offer your own hands. I mean, my students, I'm actually surprised that I have my nails completely done, because my students all the time, I say, hey, my nails are growing out, it's time for you to do my nails. Or, hey, you need practice on extensions, put extensions on me. My nails are never the same because my students are always practicing, and it's the most important aspect. And if they're not finding their own clients or doing their own hands or have access to that, it's your job as their educator to step in and help them. With that also, it's also your job on teaching them how to build a clientele sustainably, and not just saying, just make an Instagram account, post some reels, post some videos. Like, that's fine. That's how you'll get clients. That's not, at this day and age, that's not cutting it. You need to teach them the algorithm. You need to teach them return on investment. You need to teach them trending audios, key skills like that, so that they can take those skills and be successful.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. There's so much more involved in it than I think a lot of people are acknowledging.
Yes, I agree.
Let's touch on the new laws and how they're going to be affecting apprenticeships in Utah starting in January.
Yes, starting in January. So back in March of 2025 this year, they passed a bill basically upending the entire cosmetology industry. I'll be completely honest, I'm only knowledgeable on nails because that's what's important to me right now. Basically, there's a few main factors that have changed about how nail apprenticeships are run. The first thing that is huge is instead of 375 hours in order to get licensed, it dropped down to 300 hours, which is on par with nail school.
Okay, so nail school has always been 300?
Yeah, nail school's always been 300. And apprenticeships have been 375. I don't know why there's been a difference. I actually agree with the drop down. I think 300 hours is plenty. My students, they have 4 days left. They have been feeling so antsy to start their career for a couple weeks. And by dropping it down to 300 hours, shortens their education by 2.5 weeks, but it gets them in the door of the industry sooner. And the last 2.5 weeks, they're antsy to go anyway. So I'm excited to see how that change impacts the industry. I think it will be a positive change. But yeah, it's on par with nail school.
Okay, interesting. I didn't know that.
Yeah. The other thing that has changed is that there are now minimum hour requirements for teaching curriculum. I can't name them off the top of my head, but for example, we are now required to teach 10 hours of acrylic or 10 hours of sanitation and disinfection, things like that. So there are minimum hour requirements for each topic. Okay. The other major change has been there are now client minimums requirements. So sculpting the nail is now 10 clients for that skill. Wrapping with a hot towel is now 10 clients, things like that. So there are minimum clients requirements now, which I think is a huge change because before there's never been any requirements. It's just been take what you can get. And now it holds educators accountable to find clients that will fit those criteria.
Okay.
The last major change that will greatly impact is the licensing for apprenticeships. So before, it's a little confusing. Before, we could have 6 students under our license, but only 2 could be taught during the same time block. So for example, I could take 2 students Monday, 2 students Tuesday, 2 students Wednesday for a total of 6 at a time. The law has now changed and we are only allowed 2 under our license, 1 per day. So 1 on Monday and 1 on Tuesday. They don't give our minimum requirements per week. They just say you can't have them in more than 40 hours a week. But that is a major, major change, and it will be very impactful and very fascinating to see.
I've seen a lot of people posting and commenting about this. Seems the overall consensus is negative on this change.
Yes.
How do you see it impacting the industry overall?
I agree with all the other changes. I agree with the minimum 300 hours. I agree with the minimum clients. I agree with the hour requirements for education. I don't agree with having 1 student per day. And the reason for that is because it is so nice to have a friend with you, someone to collaborate with. There's been so many instances where one student asks a question in a way and the other student is like, oh my gosh, I didn't even realize that's what was happening right now. And you asking that question made it click for me. And sometimes I can't teach something in a way that is understandable to all students. That's impossible. So to have someone else to bounce ideas off of is really, really nice. And honestly, I would say more so a requirement. The other reason, I hate to talk about finances, but the other reason is having to take one student on one day, another student on another day, makes it so that I either make the same amount of money, but I work more, or I only take one student and I cut my income in half, or I raise my prices. And none of those are good options to me, to be honest. So I think that will be a huge impact. I've already seen educators up their prices by $3,000, $4,000, $5,000, and it's just super disappointing. So
I'm really curious the reasoning behind that particular change. I have actually been reaching out to Doppel to have somebody come on the podcast from the board to talk about it, because I really am curious about just like the reasoning behind it. Because I agree with you. I think working in a pair with somebody else, I think that's really valuable just as far as learning goes. Learning on your own is just kind of, it's harder. Bouncing ideas off of people. And so I'm really curious. I feel like that's not an educational mindset decision. I'm curious if it's like maybe they're seeing some problems with apprenticeships and they're pinning it on the fact that you're not in a one-on-one setting.
Yeah, I think there's a few different aspects, and I don't know, to be honest. I think that would be really beneficial to get some answers. I do know that if I put myself in the shoes of these lawmakers, I can understand the thought process of, 2-on-1 isn't as valuable as 1-on-1, because then you'll have your instructor there all by yourself and you'll get one-on-one experience. I can see that thought process, but in an environment where it's very interactive, it's always continuing education, things are always changing, one-on-one is actually more of a downgrade than two-on-one. I do agree with you that I think Doppel and those lawmakers saw some hard things with the education system with apprenticeships. Like I said before, we could have up to 6 students on our license at a time. And who's to say that you don't take all 6 on Mondays and Wednesdays and then you have 6 girls with you? So I think by them limiting how many girls we can have under our license, as well as limiting how many we can teach at a time, ensures that people get what they pay for, and that people get the, I guess, attention that they deserve. But I do think that it was an overcorrection of problems that we've had in the past.
It almost feels like it de-incentivizes instructors from
100%.
taking on apprentices. So maybe that amount of instructors will start to decline.
I agree with that. It's going to be very interesting to see. When I do the math, I have this very specific formula that I use to decide my tuition costs so that I know what I'm giving to people. And if my students ask for that, I give them that sheet to justify the expense. When I calculated how much I would make taking students and then how much I would make taking clients in lieu of students, with this new change, I would actually make more taking clients. Not to say that financially is, in my opinion, it should be the last reason you take students. So I most likely will continue to take students with the new change, but it definitely is a deterrent. Why would I teach if I could just take clients and make more or make the same amount? So it'll be very interesting to see what people decide to do. I don't know if I should even assume or if I should guess, but my guess would be that people are going to continue to take students and just raise prices, which my opinion is that's really hard to stomach because $8,000 already is a lot of money. And when I did the math, if I were to make the same amount that I'm making now, I would have to raise my prices to $12,000 for an apprenticeship. And unfortunately, I don't feel that a lot of educators in Utah offer a $12,000 apprenticeship.
And how does that compare to nail school? What are the average prices for nail school? Yeah,
last I looked, I would say MTech I think is around $6,000. I will be honest, I haven't seen, I remember when I was looking, but I probably should know better, but I think it's around $6,000.
Yeah, definitely lower than apprenticeship prices.
Definitely.
I think that is the trade-off. That you're paying more for, that more hands-on experience in the salon that you had mentioned. Correct me if I'm wrong, but my understanding up until now was the requirement as far as an educator go is just that your students pass both the practical and the theory exams. Is that correct?
Yes, apart from the 375 hours. They have to hit 375 hours. The first 10% of your hours has to be theory. And then other than that, as long as they hit the theory hours, they hit the 375, and then they pass their 2 exams, then they would get their license.
Okay.
Yeah.
So an educator won't necessarily get flagged for any of the things that you've seen going on unless their students aren't passing those exams.
Correct. I do think in theory, Doppel should be checking on educators and salons to make sure that they're following the rules and regulations. But in practice, I've never been checked by Doppel. I don't have anything to hide, so I'm fine too, but it just doesn't happen. And so people can get away with whatever they want. As long as you write it down on paper that it's the law, then you can do whatever you want. This is a side tangent, but I interviewed a girl a while back that her educator, in order to earn hours, had her drive to St. George for her exams and drive back to St. George so that she would get an additional 8 hours or however long on her paper to satisfy the 375 requirement, which that's another rule and regulation, is that every hour that you earn has to be in direct supervision of your educator. And that includes lunches, that includes vacations, that includes anything. So for her to have to drive to St. George and then come back not only is lying about your hours, but your educator is also taken advantage of you and made 10 hours worth of income without doing any work. So,
oh my gosh.
I know, I was shocked. I felt so bad for her. And she was like, oh, I just thought that was normal. She told me that was the only testing center. And it's just like, it is not that hard to run a good quality education. And it is not that hard to follow the rules. And so when I hear things like that, it just is really disappointing and it makes me really mad. So
that is like, it's like just them doing the absolute
barest minimum, not
bare
even the bare minimum, lower than the bare minimum.
Exactly. Below the bare minimum because you're not supposed to be doing that. That's like.
And then charge her $8,500 for her apprenticeship.
Yeah.
And I don't know about you, $8,000 is a lot of money to me. And so to then have to drive to St. I can't even say it again. Like, it's so sad.
Yeah. No,
so
we
sad.
need to be taking apprenticeships a lot more seriously.
Absolutely.
Speaking of, I was thinking we could just throw out some red flags and green flags of educators for potential students to be looking for in an instructor. Let's start with green flags.
Okay. Green flags. I believe if you ask your educator for a set schedule of when they will be teaching, green flag, if they can give it to you during the interview process. Another green flag, can you provide me a list of students that have graduated and are successful? Success looks different for everyone, but I do think it's important to provide a list so that they can reach out and find their own opinions.
I want to comment on that one because I would have loved to reach out to the people who did the apprenticeship before I did. I would have gotten a lot of telling information that I didn't have at the time.
I agree with that. A side note as well, I think it's important to reach out to multiple girls through different seasons of this educator's time. Like, not just the class before, but reach out to their first class or their fourth class or whatever class, because sometimes you don't really vibe very well with your educator and it can be kind of hard to get through that. But if the consensus is, I felt so prepared and I loved every second of it, you probably have a really good instructor. I would say another green flag, where are you going to be in the salon and how often are you going to be with your educator? With my salon, I actually have it set up differently. I have the nail bar side on one side, and then there's a wall, and then my students are on the other side. I tell them they can always bring their stuff to the other side, but it's nice to have some separation for theory and things like that. But it's important. Am I going to be shoved in the back corner and not see you for 10 hours a day for 15 weeks? Or am I going to have access to the goings on of the salon? And then my other green flag, I would say, how many clients do you take per day? And when do you take them? And when is the time slot that I can have you one-on-one? I do think it is within educators' rights to take clients. I do think it's important for students to see the goings on with clients, but I do think that it should be a very set schedule that I take clients 12 p.m. to 5 p.m. And you can know that any time before or after that. And my clients also know my students are my priority. So if they come up to me and they have a question, I'm leaving you in the chair and I'm sorry, but they take my priority always. So.
Okay. Yeah. Great green flags. I would add maybe also just asking instructors or instructors who exude an amount of joy for teaching, an amount of likability for what they're doing as an educator. I feel like that's green flag. If they seem like they're going to have fun working with you and that they're going to enjoy what they're doing also.
I agree with that. Yeah, I love my students. Thank goodness, I haven't had a bad group. And I think that these relationships that you make throughout your apprenticeship can be lifelong. And it's just amazing to see them bloom and blossom. And I think it's really important to get along with the people you work with for 40 hours a week, 15 weeks apart. So
totally. And you shouldn't have to leave an apprenticeship having to go invest a ton of more money in education and continued education in order to really feel prepared to do nails.
Exactly. That as well as product. I would say your student kit also. I would say if during the education or the interview process, if you ask them for an itemized list of what's included in your kit. They should be able to provide that, as well as how much money they invest in it. I have seen time and time again, oh, your kit is valued at $2,000, and then you show up and you get nothing, and they can't provide where your money went. That's your money. Like, your tuition is your money. You deserve to know where it goes, and you deserve to get a high quality kit as well as a high quality education.
Along with that too, I think another green flag is educators who are teaching multiple product lines.
Yes, I agree with that.
If you are teaching your student only to use Luminary, that is the only product that you're teaching them, you're doing a disservice to them and all of their future clients, because that may not be what their future clients need. And nail tech should be equipped with the ability to work with other products.
Yeah, I agree with that. In my student kit, I provide 2 products. I provide Luminary and Nail Thoughts, and then obviously I provide Accents Hard Gel for their extensions. I provide Luxa Polygel, and then I provide Young Nails Acrylic. Apart from what they get in their student kit, they get to take that home and use it. I also have a classroom kit, and that's where I have Luxa Flexi. That's where I have Magpie Build Me Up. It's where I have Accents. I already said Trinity, but their Balance line. I have an array of products that they get to use. And I tell my students, if there's something here that you vibe with better, let me know and I'll buy you your own. I don't want to ever put like, oh, sorry, I already gave you $2,000 worth of student kit stuff. If there's something in your kit you're not going to use, give it back to me and I'll replace it with something you will. Or not only that, let me add to what I've given you so that I can set you up for success. I think that's really important. That's something that not a lot of students get.
Mm-hmm. I really love the mindset that you have and the outlook you have on educating. I just feel like I would have loved to do an apprenticeship with you, and your students,
so nice.
Your students are so lucky.
Thank you.
So that's awesome. Okay. A few really, raging red flags.
Gonna ruffle some feathers. Huge red flag number 1. If your educator cannot give you an exact time of day when they will be educating you, that is a red flag. I feel very strongly structure is very important. If they say, oh, like, I don't know when, but I could, like, on, like, this day, I'll, like, teach you for, like, a couple hours, and then this day, that doesn't go well. Because what ends up happening is this instructor most likely will have a client or come in late, or something will happen. There needs to be structure in place saying every single day you can expect me from 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. or 3 p.m. to 5 p.m. And I will do nothing else during that time but be there to educate you. Mm-hmm. So that's a huge red flag to me.
And have a plan and know what they're going to educate at that point.
That as well. I think that I feel very strongly you need to have a set curriculum. Your students need to show up every single day and know what they're doing without you having to tell them. I personally use Canvas. I didn't use Canvas in my apprenticeship, but I use Canvas for my students, and it is written out week 1, sanitation, disinfection, week 2, gel, week 3, acrylic, and every single day it says, okay, day 1 of gel, we're learning theory, we're learning this, we're learning that, we're doing this. Tomorrow you're expected to do this and that. Next week you're expected to find a model, and the week after that you can take clients. So they have everything listed out so that nothing is ever a question.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, that's so awesome. Yeah. Any other red flags you want to mention?
Another red flag, I would say, again, ruffling feathers. The law is every hour that you earn needs to be in front of your instructor in person. I have seen a lot of people say 20 hours in the salon and then 10 hours of homework at home doing theory. And unfortunately, that's just not legal. That's a strong word, but it's not legal. You pay for every hour that your instructor gives you. So the $8,000 tuition pays for 300 hours of hands-on direct supervision. So if you are looking through someone's curriculum and they say, oh, you'll get Monday, Wednesday, 10 a.m. to 6 p.m., and then you do 10 hours of homework at home, that's a red flag. And unfortunately, you're not getting your money's worth. So
when you say theory, and what should the theory instruction look like? During my apprenticeship, I was just told to read the book.
Yeah.
What should that look like?
In my opinion, Milady is a little outdated. There are some things in there that I I'm like, yeah, I guess technically, but it's not industry standard anymore. So they are required to read in the book. I do give them the book to read. There are things in the book that I expand on when I educate. I also give them a workbook to do as they read, as well as a quiz. They need to get 100% on the quiz before I allow them to move on to the next chapter. So that's kind of what theory looks like as far as what the state is concerned. The theory that I expand on, I actually custom wrote, this is crazy. I can't believe I did this. I custom wrote my curriculum for every topic that I feel is important. So prep, I custom wrote a curriculum. Shaping, I custom wrote a curriculum. Hard gel versus soft gel. And that's really important that they know the theory behind. I teach so many licensed newly nail techs. And even today, I said, this is why you have lifting. If you have lifting in this area, these are the reasons. And she said, I was just told that lifting is just because the gel didn't stick to the nail. And they have nothing to go off of. It's so important to know the why behind why we do things. So,
or your client just didn't put on their cuticle oil.
Yeah, it's like, oh, her nail's just dehydrated. No, and you can tell when things are like, it's actually really rewarding, and for you to learn something and you learn the theory behind why does soft gel sometimes work better than hard gel or vice versa, and then you test it in person and your client comes back 3 weeks later and magically this problem that you've had has now been solved because you know the theory behind it. So
any last words for either future students, current apprentices, or instructors in the nail industry?
I would just say to future students and current students, advocate for yourself, know your worth. You are worth every second of your educator's time that they will give you. You are worth the effort that it takes to get a high quality education. You are entitled to it by paying tuition and entering into a contractual agreement. You're entitled to your instructor's time. So I would just say, know your worth and advocate for yourself and find the corner of the nail industry that will be supportive of you and help you through. And it will be amazing and you'll have a great career. I would say to educators, you don't know what you don't know. And so I would just maybe implore educators to do some more research, make sure you know the laws. And if you know the laws, follow them. And then as well, keep your students as your priority and they will do so good. So,
and this is our kind way of asking everyone to just do better.
Yeah. Know better and do better. Yeah.
Awesome. Thanks so much for being here.
Thank you for having me. It was so fun.
Thank you so much for listening to this week's episode of the Beauty Connective podcast. If you enjoyed it, please leave us a review. And if you are a beauty professional wanting to grow your career, build your clientele outside of social media, go build a free profile at thebeautyconnective.com.